and environmental toxins are playing a bigger part every day into the quality of how your lymphatic system works.
And I think even in the US or North America, we still have a large percentage of the population that, number one, is never really taught about lymphatics as one of the systems of the body.
Your lymph nodes are like little powerhouses of immunity.
Are there any other success stories for people using Flowpresso that have really impacted you in the way that woman's story did?
Just the most heart moment that I'd ever felt.
We travel so frequently, and give us the inside scoop on how you're managing recovery and self-care.
This is Willpower.
Sweet dear friend who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years, Desiree Despong. She is a passion player in the wellness world and known for her work in health technology, as well as 20 plus years as an expert in lymphatics. And our lymphatic system, which is part of our circulatory system, is ever so important. And Desiree will share on this show why we need the lymphatic system to work meticulously well to detox us, to help us with our longevity and weight loss, and all the reasons that we've been overlooking the lymphatic system for years and years until the last more recent times where it's come into conversation around the immune system and around wellness. The Flowpresso technology is a product that is non-invasive therapy that combines compression, far infrared heat, and deep pressure therapy to promote relaxation and recovery. It's used by so many people navigating chronic conditions. It's used by athletes, wellness practitioners, and just individuals seeking stress relief. Now, the Flowpresso world also includes the Flow Orb and the Flow Vibrate, which are at-home devices, which I use myself and have come out in the most recent year. And this gives us all an opportunity to be able to maintain some lymphatic drainage over our time at home when we are in between our Flowpresso sessions. So if you're a clinician or practitioner, this is an episode for you. And if you have a deep desire to learn more about longevity, more about the human body and how we can self-care, we will talk about lymphatics, lymphatic drainage, Flowpresso, and really leaning into our best self and our best health. Desiree has a long history and a strong interest in holistic health. She has worked to improve the quality of life of so many people, including first responders and athletes and people who are dealing with major dis-ease states. You will see how passionate she is about educating others on this show. She's just launched a podcast and is available on the YouTube channel for Flowpresso as well. So much more to come about lymphatics, the lymphatic system, and how we can utilize this system for immune boosting, for detoxification, and why it is ever so important and elemental to our health, longevity, and well-being. Let's dive in with Desiree.
Welcome to the Willpower Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Weitzel. Together, we explore health optimization tools that propel you from comfort to courage, illuminating the path together to a remarkable life through breath, cold, and biohacking.
Good morning. I'm here with Desiree Despong from Flowpresso. I'm so happy to have a formal sit down with you, Desiree. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored.
Yeah. So I've had a chance, as I'm sure I will pop into the intro and say that I've had a chance to meet and work around Desiree and see and be in the Flowpresso device and just explore this technology over the last few years. And I really want to dive into the expertise, the background, the experience that you bring in a way that we haven't always gotten a chance to sort of deep dive. I mean, I've sat in on presentations where you've given your gifts to the room, but really to share with the audience why the lymphatic system, to start at the very beginning, the lymphatic system is so important, and really like how you came to this, because you have this beautiful story leaning into this work and this device. So will you share a little bit of your story with us, how you sort of came into the world of lymphatics before Flowpresso was born?
I certainly can. Thank you. So it was about 20 years ago. I was learning orthobionomy, which is an osteopathy way of working with Chapman's reflexes. It's a way to work with the lymphatic system from certain pressure points. And I was kind of spellbound. 2 days of just immersed in this concept that we have a lymphatic system, which I can tell you 20 years ago there was very little being spoken about the lymphatic system. And from a medical perspective, we've always looked at it as just for swelling or lymphedema. It's never been really seen for what it can actually do when it's coming to health and recovery and performance. So I decided to go on a journey then, and I actually came to the States to train. I wanted to work with a company that was using some technology to enhance it, to actually move the lymphatics from it was electrostatic kind of frequency that we were using. So I studied over here, and then I also studied with the manual drainage. So I'd already been trained in shiatsu and orthobionomy and all sorts of things, but I really wanted to go that step further, and I wanted to be able to apply with my hands work as well as use a technology. Because one of the things you learn with the lymphatic system is it's really important that you open pathways. You open up the gates to make sure that the fluid will flow, or the dams for, that if that's an easy analogy. And so being able to do both was really important. And then I think about a couple of years later, I actually approached the company I wanted to teach in New Zealand. I really felt that it was time to get this out there. We needed to get more people doing lymphatic drainage. And that's when I actually presented a whole training platform and flew to the States and delivered on it. And next minute I was this international trainer and spending a lot of time in the United States. So it was been quite an opportunity for someone from, the bottom of the earth, literally, in New Zealand, to get this incredible opportunity. And that's when I was fortunate to meet so many amazing practitioners that wanted to bring this into their clinic.
Yeah. And the lymphatic system, I think, all of the work you've been doing for all these years, it's like, we talk about this thing, it's like overnight success 20 years later, putting so much time and work and effort and energy around learning and sharing with so many communities and so many people. And I think even in the US or North America, we still have a large percentage of the population that, number one, is never really taught about lymphatics as one of the systems of the body in school. Women have some connectivity to lymphatics because there's a little bit more talk about lymphatic drainage massage and what's it all about? And is that just like another fancy name for a body work modality? And I really think unpacking a little bit of the importance of the lymphatic system and I was fortunate enough to get some insight and information around how the lymphatic system helps is in coordination with the breath, right? The breath is helping pump and move things around the body. And so that's the angle that I've always heard and learned about it from, fortunately, and until I met you, and then learning even more about lymphatics. So I just want to give some education to people who are listening, because we talk about the system, but nobody really, I think many people or the laymen in the world, we're all walking around and just feeling into what it exactly means and how does it all work. And so you spoke about drainage, and maybe you could speak a bit about detoxification, and just, it's no small system is my point. So I'd love to highlight just what and how important this system is in our body, and maybe just give a little detail.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously the lymphatic system is part of the circulatory system. So obviously you've got your blood that pumps from the heart, but ironically there's about 3 times more lymph than there is blood. So automatically you start to realize it's playing a bigger role. And probably the easiest way to explain without using too many medical terms is if you were to think of your body like an aquarium, and the fish are your cells in the body. So they sit in the interstitial environments, the tissue space. And of course, if you think of the food that you feed the fish, that's a little bit like your blood supply. It's bringing in oxygen and nutrients. And then we have a filter, right? Usually in an aquarium, we always have a filter to keep the water clean. And so if you think of that as your lymphatic system pumping away, trying to remove that byproduct after a period of time that the fish is creating, or in this scenario, the cells of the body, then you start to realize that if the pump didn't work, what would happen? And over time, if you leave that water, it accumulates and it starts to darken and it's full of byproduct, and next minute the fish will die, very similar to cells. And then the lymphatic system's designed to actually pump and put it through into lymphatic capillary. You say capillaries, we say capillaries in New Zealand, so I don't catch myself every now and then. And so once it goes into there, it's literally becoming part of the immune response. So your lymph nodes are like little powerhouses of immunity, where there's all these different lymphocytes deciding, do I keep this fluid? Do I destroy it? Am I going to recycle? What am I going to do? Before it actually goes back to the heart, which is then cleansed through the liver, and we will eliminate either through the bowel, via the kidneys, breath, or through sweat. So it's playing an incredibly big role on cleansing the body. And I think one of the things that you brought up before is breath does play a big part. It is one of the ways that we do move lymphatics because unlike the heart, it doesn't have a pump. So it's reliant on us, A, moving, and B, the breath. And the breath can have if it's a decent breath that we're doing, not just a shallow chest breathing, but an abdominal breath, we're actually pumping the fluid from your waist down up through the chest wall to go back to the heart. So it plays kind of a pivotal role to do that well on a regular basis. And stress and environmental toxins are playing a bigger part every day into the quality of how your lymphatic system works.
Yeah, so important. And when I heard that figure, it felt staggering when you said we're almost 3 times as much lymph as blood. So it's elemental in the detoxification of the body. And, you know, you've created several different devices really for people to be able to utilize along the journey. I'd love to speak about sort of the heavy hitter, the Flowpresso device. Just what was the inspiration for that? I mean, yes, you were working in the industry and yes, you are passionate about this and really understanding. I gave a presentation recently on deep pressure therapy and within a presentation on recovery. And in digging into even more of that research, I found so much interesting just from a parasympathetic tone to, you know, how we create different awareness in the body and how we're moving things through. So I just using deep pressure therapy. And that was in many cases, that was like, yes, Flowpresso is an amazing example. And then it has plus with it. But I was even just speaking about like from weighted blankets to other things and other ways we can create that response in the body. So Flowpresso is this whole other ball game, this whole other world. And I wanted you to speak a bit about where the inspiration came from to be an inventor, because you're an inventor. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it's kind of off the ends of the spectrum, isn't it really? It's quite unusual to go from a world of being a clinician into an inventor. But, you know, it came about, I think, because as the knowledge of how important lymphatic drainage is to detoxification, because again, if we're not opening those pathways, then of course we're not allowing the byproduct to move. We're just recycling pretty much. So if you're on a detox program and you're not thinking about your elimination processes and then the lymphatics, you know, you're not able to literally move out the junk in the body. So, you know, it started to get known a lot more. We were getting more and more people here in the US, and especially in your biohacking or your functional medicine or your biological medicine clinics, where they were seeing it was so important as part of their program. But one of the biggest challenges was getting practitioners. You know, it's a very specialized area or field, and you need to know what you're doing and you need to know how to direct the fluid. And it can be quite long, like a good hour and a half, to really be able to cover the whole body. So it was actually a gentleman called Dr. Jeff Drobot. He is now called the Biomed in Scottsdale. And him and I used to teach there a lot in his center. And he sat me down one day and said, "Can't you just invent something for us?" And I remember sitting there looking at him going, "Serious? Like, I'm a therapist. I'm not a med tech person." He goes, "Desiree, you know the relationship between lymphatics and parasympathetic. We have to bridge that gap. We have to make something whereby we can engage that parasympathetic response." So coming to your deep pressure in a minute. And then we can actually then encourage lymphatic drainage, because most of your fluid will go down overnight. And we now have this lymphatic system, which is in the brain. And they're saying we need at least 8 hours sleep to detox the brain. So sleep has become so paramount, but so is engaging parasympathetic. And, you know, I'm seeing it all around the world. It's like we're all in this heightened state of what next after everything we've been through. And when you're in that state, it's like you're still staying in that sympathetic response. You know, you're not actually going into that deep restorative recovery. So that's where the drive really came from. So I was running a really large clinic with actually another American. He was an acupuncturist in New Zealand. We had about 13 practitioners from everything from massage through to psychology. And we both were a bit burnt out by it. Like, it was hard work. It's kind of tough to run a big clinic like that. So we sort of decided that it was time for a change. So we closed that down, and then I kind of became like a mad scientist in a basement. That's the best way to describe it. I brought in tech all around the world. I wanted to see if there was already something that was working to save me creating. And the first prototype came out it was about 9 months later, and I actually brought it here to the States to 3 colleagues, one being Dr. Drobot, to be able to show them to see if I was on track. And it was very clunky, very embarrassing now, to be honest. If I had to show it to anyone, it hides in a cupboard to remind me of where I've come. But I still will never forget the day I was actually leaving the US and I was in the customs in Los Angeles, and I got a video from one of the clinics sending me this woman who had been dealing with Lyme's for 26 years. Her life was just, she had very little energy. She didn't feel light. She was really struggling day to day. And it was a video of her crying and going, I've never felt this good for so long after one session. So here I am, bawling my eyes out in the middle of customs going, oh my God, I think I've created something really good. And then I went away and came back to New Zealand, did a whole lot of research because I wanted to improve it. Very important that we get a sequential, movement of compression. It has to overlap so we don't have any fluid move backwards, right? We've got to get the momentum to move fluid up, literally upwards against gravity. So when I was doing that, we started to do a lot of heart rate variability studies. And I actually sent them to Dr. Drobot, and he goes, you've done something wrong. There's no way you could be getting these results. And I said, well, not, but okay, I'll do them again because we used a thing called Nerve Express. So I sent it back again. He goes, oh, wow, you really are changing people's heart rate variability from sympathetic to parasympathetic, which then this leads me into deep pressure therapy because I had to kind of work out why. I mean, I know when we did manual drainage, like lymphatic drainage, someone, just like massage, they go into this peaceful state. But this was dropping them into even deeper. And I think it was as simple as being wrapped up, loved and hugged. When we talk about the suit so people understand it, and we just call it the suit because it's a loving expression of trying to explain pneumatic compression and heat and, so because it gets a little bit confusing. But if you just think about your feet are covered, your legs are covered, your abdomen's covered, your arms are covered, and there's even a back piece for those really tense shoulders so that we can get the thoracic pumping, which is what pulls the fluid from the abdomen up to the heart. And, if you think about that happening, this beautiful squeezing, like it's just all sequential, it's moving up your body in a rhythm. So it's almost like you're rippling through the body. And so then we bring in the heat as well to help the body let go. Because we're learning more and more about fascia now. We're understanding it, that it plays just as pivotal role in your health, how it moves, so your connective tissue is what does the lymphatics, and those two are interlinked. Yeah. So finding this, I had an incredible fascia teacher get in it the other day and for the first time, and she had to be left alone for about 10 minutes afterwards to reintegrate what happened. And she said, I have to use a really high specialist in fascia to give me an unwind like that. And your suit just did it in 40 minutes. And she was just blown away that we could actually achieve that.
Yeah. And I can shout this out because I've been in the suit so many times at this point. For anyone who's listening as well, if you're not a clinician, if you're not running a space or bringing a Flowpresso in as a possibility, it's like finding the space that's near you, finding the place that has a Flowpresso. And I'm a big believer in the protocol. In the early years as I was getting into Flowpressos more often, just the frequency of use made a difference for me. The times that, we take a little video of content after I got out because there's just such a level of peace. And for me, as even someone who tends to run a bit more high stim, to have moments where I can ground myself, that the parasympathetic response that comes from being in Flowpresso has brought me to laughter, brought me to tears. It's a very, I don't want to say that it's like a private moment, but it is a private moment typically when you go. And every time I've done it, it's been, except at some maybe conferences, but even there, it's like eye mask, headphones, music. It's an insular interoceptive device to use, and in a way that you feel held in an era of time post-COVID when so many people, and I know we still say it's like years now gone by, but people are still learn to touch each other less. So there's an oxytocin kind of component of someone wrapping you in the suit, and there's a lot of emotionality that can come up, right? Not for everyone perhaps, but creating such downregulation in the body, just specifically for me, time and time again, just really making me feel a bit more whole, a bit more like myself, a bit safe to be in stillness and process things. And I've done lots of body work, and yes, all those modalities can be great, but where else can you sort of be set up for success, left to your own, by someone who's caring for you and setting you up, and then coming back 40 minutes later and say, and your experience is radically different than when you got in the suit. You're feeling your experience, your interoceptive ability. I think we really can tune in. And so that's my little mini review. But for anyone who's listening, this is very different than, hey, I just did a workout, I'm getting in sports compression pants. Or it's just such a different experience because it's whole body. And because I, in very few occasions in my life, apart from doing lots and lots of breath work, have I been able to just have a device that downregulates me as deeply. And I'm sure I'm not the first to say that to you. But because I've had such experience with it, which is why it's so nice to be able to have this conversation with you now, I also just wonder, you shared a couple of beautiful, memorable stories about people having success and using this. And I know we're talking about a medical device. And so I just wondered if there are any other stories that come to mind when you've been working. I know you've worked in with firefighters and lots of different populations. Are there any other success stories for people using Flowpresso that have really impacted you? In the way that woman's story did?
I remember, so some of my work's been with, as you said, first responders. We did a whole trial with New Zealand Police. And, when you're dealing with anyone that's in that kind of role, we've also done firefighters and nurses. They're dealing with a lot of stress, a lot of trauma. And I think it's as you've, said, it's that feeling of being held and safe brings another level of change to the body because you can let go. And more importantly, I think one of the most beautiful things, other than, we've had some incredible outcomes from a physical point of view, like recovery and, from illness and those sorts of things. But I think it's been the most ones that I've had moments is when, you're watching change in people. And I'll bring this case where I did a study very early on when we're a class 2 medical device. Now, being that we can't put children in, but what we found is that we did this young boy who had chronic fatigue. He had had for 2 years, and he was only doing 2 half mornings at school. And he was 12 years of age. And so I asked if he could be part of a trial because I wanted to see what it did for chronic fatigue. And anyway, all of a sudden he started to change. Like after 1 session, he was off the couch more. After 2 sessions, he started to go out and play soccer, which was football. And he started to all of a sudden make these significant changes and he was only using Flowpresso because they had tried everything, his mother and him. And his mother was a physical trainer. And so she struggled a lot with it. It was really tough. And I don't know if you know the research, but there is a relationship between children with chronic fatigue and the pregnancy at the time, whether it was a traumatic delivery or a traumatic pregnancy. So I asked that question and it did apply. But he got through his 6 weeks and he was starting to come back. He was becoming a normal kid again. He was going to school more. All these things were happening. But beautiful part I remember was I asked then what his mother like to join us, because I really felt there's that real interconnection that you have mother and child that you can't even explain. It's energetic. And therefore, if the child is recovering, we also need to think about mum and allow mum to recover as well from the trauma and the stress of managing this. So she gets in the suit and we put him in, and he's only in 20 minutes, she's in 40. And she's just crying, like the tears are just falling. And I just let her be because I've said, at this point, I'm around if you need me. And at the end of the session, she gets up, we unwrap her, and she's leaning over, with her head in her hands, saying, I never realized how stressed I was. And then I kid you not, this beautiful young boy of 12 rubs her back and he goes, but Mum, this is what Flowpresso does. It helps us let go. And it was just the most heart moment that I'd ever felt, watching that change between the two of them, because you were acknowledging the carer, as well through this. And I think we forget that the carer is just as much managing stress as what the actual person that's going through the illness. And that was just one. I've dealt with a lot of police officers that have dealt with some pretty horrendous situations here in the US. And they've just come out. The funniest one was a female who never smiled. And she says, I'm not getting in this. I don't do massage. And I went, good, because I'm not massaging you. I'm just putting you in for 10 minutes. You can get out. Anyway, she came out and she was smiling. And everyone stood there with their mouth open because they'd never seen her smile so much. And we see that over and over again. It just changes, like you said, your personality. Because you're just kind of being reset. It's like a full body reset. It's about the best way to explain it.
Yeah, it does really have that quality of sort of nervous system reset. I know that term gets overused a bit, but you just feel the shift, and it's such a strong one. Have you been struggling with like mood swings? Because lately I've been just a little all over the place. I don't know if it's Mercury retrograde or what, but I've had some highs and lows, getting a little irritated by the simplest things, navigating my hormones being a bit out of whack when I'm a health optimizer is not the most fun. Maybe you haven't been sleeping well, or you're stressing out more. There's a lot of things going on in your life right now. Your plate is very full. You know that I take regularly Bioptimizer's Magnesium Breakthrough. It's what I use with all my clients, and it's incredible. It's 7 types of magnesium rolled into one. So let's talk about a game-changing mineral, magnesium. It's going to help you with sleep. It helps you with stress, balancing your hormones, and really getting your body to function optimally. Right? And here's the thing. Most of us aren't getting nearly enough of this from our diets alone. And when you're deficient in this vital mineral, you can throw your entire system out of sync. So I doubled up lately on the Magnesium Breakthrough. 2 before I go to sleep. It's helping me work through, and my system work through some of the challenges it's having right now. In addition to over 600, last I read the research, of chemical reactions, magnesium also plays a vital role in hormonal balance, glucose metabolism, and managing symptoms across different stages of life. So utilize magnesium supplementation no matter what, and use my favorite while you're at it and support this show, Bioptimizer's Magnesium Breakthrough. They're at bioptimizers.com/wellpower. Sleep well, stress less, digest more, manage and balance your hormones. Let's feel better together. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. Can you talk a little bit just as like a businesswoman or someone who's leaning into really navigating the spaces of challenge when it comes to bringing, non-invasive therapies into healthcare and wellness, whether it be in the States or there's some big challenges that come up with sort of spreading the word and sharing the message?
Sure. It is challenging. But at the same time, I would say probably about 95% of anyone I work with is male in this industry. And one of the greatest lessons I learned very early on was to always go in saying, I don't know what I don't know. Help me, because men love to help. I think it's when we go in a little bit too strong and like we're coming in and, we are feeling vulnerable. And so that's been one of my greatest claims to fame, I say, because I've been able to work with some incredible people because I was humbled to ask the questions, can you help? And then I was able to learn what was needed and therefore how to maneuver through. Like, it's very different target market in New Zealand to what it is in the US to what it is in Australia. So you're having to adapt and get to know the people. Who are you trying to help? Is it the practitioner that is tired of massaging all their life, like they're worn out and they want to be able to have something that won't replace them, but is an adjunct to them? Or are you, are you supporting a clinic that just wants to be able to bring in another therapy, another form of technology that can work beautifully within their clinic? And it's getting to know the pain points of the practitioners, but also the customers, the people, the patients that are turning up. And I suppose that was one of my greatest advantages, is having had 20 years in the lymphatic industry. I'd seen it all. I was predominantly breast cancer is what I worked with, but I was able to see where the need was, and that was why I think it's made more of a difference.
Yeah, and then also being in the shoes of a person who's doing manual therapy or body work and knowing what that feels like, just walking the walk, right? And being able to speak to them. And the one thing I know about you just from being around you so much is you're such an avid and good listener. And I just want to honor that, because I think that's also a part of the win for you, is that when you ask someone the question, you're never really just waiting to say the next thing you want to say. It's like a real curiosity that's there and really listening. And I remember that I came to you just to say, it was even at a show or something where I was like, Desiree, I have this lump in my armpit and I just need you to look at it and tell me what's going on. And I think it's lymphatics. And you were like, let me check out and see what's going on, like really listening. And this is sort of when you introduced me to the Flow Vibe. And then now there is the Flow Orb, which is amazing because it's easy to just tuck in my armpit at night and have it vibrating. And I'm always like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'll wake up in the morning with it somewhere in the bed with me. It's super funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, just there are, as you've created this sort of ability for course correction within clinics. And the other thing you mentioned that I think is important to talk about is that it's such a complementary therapy, right? So that people who have clinics or people who are working to help others with healing dis-ease or working on de-stressing people or calming anxiety or all the conditions that many types of clinics and wellness centers use, that this is a complementary therapy so that there's the ability to have people in the suit sometimes or being massaged or in another device. And these technologies work really well together. So putting them in one space is a real win for clinicians. And for anyone who's listening who's like, I don't own a clinic or I'm not near one, or like there's other ways that we can utilize and manage the lymphatic system and drainage. And even just since meeting you, I'm like dry brushing in the like before the shower or like doing loofah in the shower and the direction of, you have this really great chart that's all around, which direction, because this is the one thing everyone needs to learn a little bit about when we're using these devices. And we're trying to talk about the Flow Orb and the Flow Vibe, is sort of directionally how to use them and what makes the most sense. And so little by little over time, I'm figuring out what direction and how to open the terminus and whatever the things are that I need to do. So yeah, well, I'd love to talk just briefly about the at-home user and the ways that people can do a little bit of lymphatic management, as well as for all of the females who are listening and everyone who's aging and navigating aging. But I know we always want to talk about beauty and skin and how we can utilize just what the Flow Vibe is, because, it gets all the attention at the shows. Everyone's like, what's going on with the Flow Vibe and the Flow Orb, and just why you created those and the best way to sort of be able to everyone can get their hands on them pretty easily, but the best way is to use them. Yeah.
So they they initially came from realizing that we had certain aspects of areas of the body that weren't covered by the Flowpresso. And so obviously we cannot put compression around someone's throat. So that's where Flow Vibrate came from. And, with the insights and knowing about lymphatics and all these neurological issues that are becoming more significant, that if we could open up the cervical nodes, which are the nodes that run down the side of the neck, and there's a really large one behind the ears, and then we've got ones under our jaw, that we could actually start to drain not only the lymphatics, but the sinuses, puffiness, that morning puffiness that we all have. And as we get older, we could start to actually change what was going on, especially in this head neck area. The great thing about it is it's got 3 vibrations, so we can use it for the axilla, for the armpit, that is, or for the abdomen area, so it wasn't limiting. I think one of the things I found in my 20 years is I think, we're always telling people they're overweight, but there is a real link between that and the lymphatics and the stagnation, or it's not functioning correctly. So the one thing I do want to push when it comes to lymphatic work is that, there's a lot of people on Instagram now showing you how to do your lymphatic drainage manually. And I've seen more now in the last 2 years than I've seen in my whole 20 years. It's phenomenal. So it's great that the word's getting out, but, just doing 3 to 5 minute pump, even every day, is probably not enough. So to be able to, because, environmentally, we're probably dealing with more toxins than we've ever had to for many years. So there's probably more coming in than there is going out. So it's being mindful, what are you doing? Are you breathing well? Are you moving? If you get a vibration plate, or the good old, trampolines that we used to use, which specifically more lymphocyzer is the better use. Lying down with your feet up against the wall to be able to create drainage. It's a great yoga pose, but that's when you can also do your breath work. And if you've got your Flow Vibrate, you can have that in your hand and do your face as well. I'm all into the biohacking, self-care, do it all at
stack
once.
everything
really
together. Great. Yeah.
You put the orbs under your armpit as well. And the orbs came because was actually more personal, to be honest, because we didn't have anything for the axilla. And because of my many years working in breast cancer, I'm really big about breast health. And I think we underestimate the lack of flow, because you've got to remember that the breast tissue doesn't have muscle in it. It's only the pec muscle. And we're all leaning over desks a lot now. We're not using those pec muscles. And of course, pec muscles I don't know if you're younger than me, but, that I must increase my bust, and you would have your arms pumping out to be able to get the pec muscles to work. We don't do a lot of that. So there's a lot of stagnation that occurs in the breast tissue, which, the breast cancer stats are ridiculously high. So the orbs came about that, but also I put an oscillation and pulse. And the reason being is of the fascia. So the fascia needs a little bit of glide. It needs to move. So it's fantastic for that lower back pain or behind the knees because you've got lymph nodes there. It's great for the abdominal. Like I see a lot of women with a lot of pelvic stagnation, and that's why we have polycystic ovaries and probably why we're having more IVF issues than we've ever seen, more menstrual problems, because we're sitting too much and we're stagnating. And so it's getting into that, even being able to get up every hour and just go for a circuit around the office if you have to, or go down the stairs and come back up again. All of these things play a really important role for lymphatic drainage.
Yeah. And those devices just between the Flow Vibe and the Flow Orb, it's like the perfect setup because you can utilize them both. I love that you're like legs up the wall, Viparita Karani, and then 2 orbs and a vibe on your face. Just get after it.
And then the book on the abdomen to make sure you're breathing efficiently, and getting that deep abdominal breath movement. I mean, you can stack. And that's the good thing. But more importantly, I think as a woman, we're always looking after everyone else. And self-care is something, and I will admit, there's many a time I get told, "Oi, what are you doing?" I'm like, stop. Because we get caught in the caring for others that we completely forget about caring for self. And sometimes we are, limited on time. So it's working out what we can do that's incorporating. But I do know one thing from a lymphatic point of view is if you're moving lymph, you're increasing lymphocyte activity, so you're actually improving your immune response. So it's not just about draining it's actually improving your immunity, which is just as valuable right now as anything due to what we've been dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one good thing that's really come of all of the trajectory of the last 4 or 5 years is us really as a global community of people, I think, getting more aware of our health and well-being. I think it's probably why we've seen more around conversations around lymph, and all of that. And knowing that these tools exist, knowing that you've created them is it's a big win for everybody. Knowing that there's the opportunity to utilize the tools at home and going out and finding Flowpressos to get in all over the country. I just want to talk a little bit about sort of the differential as well. We spoke a lot about Flowpresso and being wrapped and whatnot, and we don't have to get super technical, but just understanding the difference that Flowpresso offers versus some other compression devices that people are maybe seeing in the marketplace, and why you mentioned heat. And I think that, for me, that's the thing that's a big standout. Of course, that heat doesn't have to be turned on the Flowpresso device, but just having heat with lymph and really understanding that, as well as the component of the chip, just talking a bit about that might be cool to vibe on.
Yeah. So I suppose our point of difference is we're trying to, again, optimize time and literally cover you as much as we can to get all the body. It's a whole system. So how I put it this way is if you're using maybe compression pants just on your legs and, you're sitting up, the reality is you're pushing fluid from your legs into your abdomen. So if you're super fit, you'll be off running and doing everything. You'll be able to move that up into the chest wall and back to the heart, like I've said. But if you're not, then it's going to pull or, enter into that pelvic area. And one or two things is going to happen. It's going to build up and create problems, or it's going to, when you go to stand up with gravity, it's going to fall back down again. So, those are one of the things why it was so important for me to have a full body therapy happening. So I wanted all your lymphatics. And heat came about. I studied a lot of different things to sort of sort out the heat side of stuff, but, that creates vasodilation. So it's creating more blood flow, more nutrients, more oxygen, to the body. But I think it's that, as I said earlier, that fascia, that deep pressure, that being held, the warmth. And I've seen for many years, women, we're the worst at having the cold lower abdomen and buttocks, and especially the upper thighs, because we stagnate there a lot, because it's our body's way of making sure we've got nothing dangerous around our organs. And so core body temp for a lot of people is quite low. And that's the basal temp when you wake up in the morning. And so even if we only put heat in the abdominal area, it makes a significant difference to overall health recovery, in my experience that I've seen over the last 4 years of using it. And that's our real big point of difference that other technology do not have. And I think it's a game changer in why we're getting a lot of the results we are, because we're thinking of it as a circulatory. I said very much at the start, you've got blood and you've got lymph, and they work together. So why wouldn't we support both of them to be able to give you optimal circulation as opposed to just consider only one? So that's why the heat came about and the point of difference. Then I worked with an engineer. He was developing some technology for arthritis, and it took me about 2 years to get the proprietary rights, but it was what we lovingly call the chip, which is basically very high technology that's using certain frequencies, and it heats up when the body's lying on it. So it creates atoms to collide, and then it sends out a frequency. And we know it works because I had to test it. I do with everything. We put someone in an EEG and we put them on the suit. We monitored everything. We were watching capnometry, which is a breathing, to watch and see that when you're in the suit, your breath actually goes deeper and longer after a period of time. But one of the things is when we turned it off, we still saw activity in the brain, which shows this frequency, right? This has been monitored by a medical doctor that understands all this. So I'm going by her feedback. So what this chip I've studied was more around discomfort and pain. So it was used to go on the neck and shoulders because so many people manage so much stress there. And of course, when you're stressed and your shoulders are tight and you're not letting go, then the lymph has to all end up just above the collarbone at the terminus, right? Or termini. So we want your shoulders relaxed. So that was the main reason. But we're starting to think that actually is what's playing a part in that change in brainwaves, in the beta theta, the response that we're getting, because we can see it in heart rate variability. Your brain literally changes while you're in there, and your emotional state as well.
Yeah, changing the brainwave state is important.
Calling all coaches, all therapists, all doctors, all people in the world of healing that want to expand their coaching capacity and their toolkit. I noticed as I was working through the health optimization landscape, two modalities that worked more effectively and efficiently than any other when they were combined, and that is breathwork and cold exposure. And sure, you've heard a lot of these guests on the podcast speaking about these tools, and I post all over social media how much I love and revere them to be able to celebrate ourselves. And what I want to encourage you, if you're working with other people, is to expand your coaching, your guiding, your facilitation kit with these two tools. And because I noticed this gap in the marketplace where there was methods and styles and specific directive energy in the breath and cold space, but there was no one who was really saying, hey, let's talk about all of it. And let's talk about the most important thing, which is context, right? And if context is king, then safety is queen. And we need to make sure we're taking care of people in the process of breathing themselves into being and really feeling into our greatest capacity in the cold, which is this amazing experience that I want you to undertake more and more, and then be able to guide people safely, effectively, with a dash of fun through breathwork and cold exposure. So sherpabreathandcold.com, there is an instructor training there. So sherpabreathandcold.com/instructor certification. You can come along, work with me and my master team, spend 2 days with us together, really applying these tools and just knocking it out of the park as you begin to layer the work in with people that you care about, people in your community, and perhaps clients that you may be working with and facilitating, so that they can all work through and learn how to heal themselves faster, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're facilitators. And I want to work with you. So come and check it out. Learn all about breathwork and all about cold exposure, both science and benefits, and the ways that you can apply these to the people in your life. I'm so stoked about these practices. And it's really from my heart that I speak to you to say, join the merry band, will you? Sherpa Breath and Cold. Come be an instructor.
Let's turn the light on you a little and your practices that you use, because you've developed these beautiful devices and technologies for people to use in their clinics, in their wellness centers, and at home. And also, you spoke a bit about how you do and how important it is for all of us to do some self-care. And of course, you have access to these incredible devices yourself, but what other self-care practices are you utilizing? Because I know, like me, you travel so frequently. Give us the inside scoop on how you're managing recovery and self-care.
So I used to rely on Flowpresso to get me to recover and survive through the very busy world that I have. Like every week I was in because it was my reset. It kept my nervous system stable. I was able to do the incredible workload I have. But I realized I would become reliant on it And so now it's every other week. Definitely when I fly, I find it's a game changer to get. I just don't suffer jet lag at all now. So I always do it on the day that I arrive in, if I can, or a day after. That's I would say my protocol. I have the most incredible massage therapist. I see her once a month just to make sure that my structure and function is working well. So I'm not, impeding on my lymphatic flow. I have all sorts of little tech things at home. I even have a vibration plate that I love to get on, and I love walking. I'm very much a garden person as opposed to a gym person. So I have a very big garden. And so I spend a lot of time digging and cleaning and, cultivating. Like my one lovely thing in New Zealand is we can grow our vegetables in our backyard or in the yard, you call it. And so I spend a lot of time in the dirt because that's earthing, grounding. To me, it's very, very, very important. I mean, obviously I'm using my Orb and my Vibe, and I've make a lot of change with breath. We actually did a social enterprise in New Zealand called Breathwork, and it's actually, I got these made. They're like a let's say a stainless steel straw, because everyone knows what they are if they think about that. And so we've been gifting those to the schools in New Zealand because we wanted to make a difference with children and anxiety, so that they learn the out breath at least. So they've been huge for us to remind me every now and then. I can feel my breath change, so it's so important. All my life as a younger person, it's kind of funny now, the hot and cold thing that we see that's such big now, the plunge pools and stuff, the ice pools. And when I was growing up, that's what we did more or less every day in Dunedin. We were in a very cold place in the bottom of New Zealand. And we had a swimming pool, very much unusual in those days, but it was called a para pool. And we had a spa pool because my dad did all this sort of thing, installation. So as children, we would run from the pool and then up to the spa pool and then run back down to the pool. It'd be freezing. There'd be ice outside, everything. That was our normal. Now, I have to admit, if I'm really honest, don't like getting into the cold plunge pools. It's just gone. I love heat. My body just goes, So I'm more of I love being in the sauna, for example, and I've got a red light mat. I do try. I have moments though, and that's why speaking with honesty that I have moments where I can go 2-3 weeks where I've realized all of a sudden I have not done any self-care. This is not okay. And you feel it and you age very quickly, I've learned, especially after going through menopause, not keeping yourself toned, not looking after yourself and having to be reminded even by your own. That's why I always have a couple of practitioners I stay in touch with because they keep me honest and they keep me real. And I think it's really important that we recognize that because we all fall off the wagon, as we call it, and we all need to be reminded to get back on it. But I'm a Scorpio, so we love going deep. I do lots of emotional, assessment. I've been learning all about intergenerational trauma. Oh my goodness, is that enlightening when you start to see the pathway that you've led due to what's going on in previous generations. So I do a lot of that work as well. I'm very much about mind, body, spirit. And whānau, which in New Zealand means family, aligning myself with the right people, having my close friends, family. It's not always biological that I'm talking about. I'm talking about that you're around the right people that build you up instead of pull you down. And all of those are my self-care.
Yeah. What's the word you said?
Whānau. So whānau is a word in New Zealand that means family. And it's everyone, like anyone that's within your community that you feel is part of your family, like we call it. And we think that there's 4 pillars, not just mind, body, spirit, but family as well, because it is such an important part of our overall healing. And they're the ones that call you out and see you when you're not doing
okay. Call you out, call you in, create your community. It's so beautiful. I ask everyone this at the end of the show all the time. If you could go back to your teenage self and give yourself a bit of advice to live fully into your willpower, fully into your gifts and capacity, what advice would you go back and give young Desiree?
I would have probably just allowed myself to know that anything was possible, that never underestimate your potential. That if you had told me I'd be here where I am now, way back then, I would have just not even understood anything. But understanding the journey gets you here, though. Like, I've had a pretty tough life, and in relationships, etc., and health. I had an electric shock, which really completely mucked up my heart rate. I was 100 resting for a very, very long time. It's still not great. I have to live with it. It is what it is. But I have seen everything as a lesson. It wasn't done to me, it was done for me so I could be better at what I do now. And my wisdom that I have and I give has come from every one of those steps. So I wouldn't change it, but I would have given myself the realization that, have an awareness that all of this is for a bigger reason and that never underestimate your potential.
Yeah, so beautiful. Well, you're an innovator and an inventor and such a caring, knowledgeable woman. I'm so thankful to have you in my circle of people I trust and love, and so thankful to have discovered this device and gotten to get to experience true down regulation with the Flowpresso and all of the toys that you've created for us. So I will, of course, share everything in the show notes and the links where people can get their Flow Orb and their Flow Vibe. And just would you share with us where they can find you online, the devices, Instagram, all of that, so that they know how to connect the dots?
Yeah, so I have, obviously my private Instagram is Desiree Despong. We've just started Lymphatic Insights. We've only just launched that podcast to try and get it out there more and more about its role. So that's exciting to launch that just only a couple of weeks ago.
Cool.
And then we have, obviously, our main website is Flowpresso. Some people say espresso. As much as I want to say it's coffee, it's not. It's Flowpresso, USA.com. And that's where all our tools are in that, like everything that we have for sale. And then also we have our Instagram, Flowpresso_INT, meaning for international. And then if you want to check out the different self-care technology, we've got Flow at Home, so that we could actually make it very clear where that came in. And we've got lots of videos on YouTube on how to. So how to use your orb, how to use your vibe. We were actually filming yesterday, doing a whole lot more, so that we can give people insight how they can do that self-care they need.
That's so exciting. So those videos will come out. And then can they go to the website and listen to the Lymphatics podcast show, or where's the best way for that? Where's that coming out?
If they go onto my website, Desiree Despong, or the YouTube, it's there, and it's in Spotify. So yeah, I've just launched my first, and there'll be a few. We're getting some pretty incredible people coming on board, like surgeons through to medical doctors because I wanted to be able to really bring forward like the misconceptions that are out there, but also understand the value of your lymphatic system, and people then knowing that they can do home care, they can look after it, and it will improve health and well-being and longevity, which is what we all want.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Hopefully we'll be able to squeeze each other soon, pun intended, in person. We almost missing, be like ships that pass in the night. But yeah, soon enough, I hope to give you a big squeeze. And thank you so much for your work and for spending this time, Desiree. It's so appreciated, and the world is a better place for you being here.
Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate being on this. It really meant a lot.
Yes, thank you for joining us here on Well Power. You can submit questions, learn more, shop incredible brands, and connect with me at wellpower.life, or follow me on social at biohacking.breath.cold. From comfort to courage, friends, we're doing it. Any foul language you hear is not approved by my mother.